In Dumbarton, Scotland, there's a place of serene, almost Gothic beauty. It's an old stone bridge arching over a lush green ravine. You know, it really looks like something out of a fairy tale. But this place, Overtoun Bridge, it hides a secret so dark and persistent, it's baffled people for over 70 years. This is a place where something has compelled hundreds of family pets to take a sudden, terrifying leap into darkness.
That was Lottie Mackinnon, describing the exact moment her border collie Bonnie just changed. And her story, it's not unique. It's a story that has been echoed by hundreds of visitors to the bridge. It always starts the same way. A moment of stillness, then a sudden, inexplicable frenzy, and then a desperate 50-foot plunge onto the rocks below. Miraculously, Bonnie survived. So many others weren't so lucky.
It started back in the 1950s, and it wasn't long before the locals gave Overtoun Bridge a chilling nickname, the Bridge of Death. This marks the beginning of a truly disturbing pattern, a strange, localized phenomenon that has earned this beautiful Victorian structure a global and pretty macabre reputation.
So how many are we talking about? Well, the numbers you hear, while they're hard to verify and probably have grown over time, are just staggering. Some reports claim as many as 600 dogs have made that leap, but what we know for sure, and what's so tragic, is the verified count. At least 50 of those falls have been fatal.
But here's where it gets really strange. These aren't just random isolated tragedies. As people started to look closer, both scientists and just curious locals, they were struck by the incredible similarities between every single case. A clear, repeating pattern started to emerge from all the chaos.
The details. I mean, this is what makes the story so haunting. The jumps almost always happen on clear, sunny days. The dogs are overwhelmingly long-nosed breeds. Think retrievers, collies, shepherds. Dogs that were bred for their exceptional sense of smell. And maybe the most unsettling detail of all, they leap from the very same spot, between the final two parapets on the right side of the bridge. Always.
And if you think that's strange, get this. This detail illustrates just how compulsive whatever is happening here really is. Witnesses have reported dogs who actually survived the fall scrambled their way back up the ravine and immediately tried to jump again. This isn't just an accident, it feels like a powerful, overwhelming urge. And this bizarre behavior has led investigators down two very, very different paths. One of science and one of superstition.
Okay, so let's start with the scientific approach. In 2005, an animal behaviorist, a Dr. David Sands, he came to the bridge. He was determined to find a rational, earthbound explanation for all of this. He was looking for a trigger, not a ghost.
One of the first things Dr. Sands did was get something straight. He quickly ruled out the idea of dog suicide. As he explained it, dogs just don't have the mental capacity to plan their own death. His official verdict wouldn't be suicide, but something he called death by misadventure, a terrible accident born from a perfect storm of instinct and illusion.
So, to solve this puzzle, Sands knew he had to stop thinking like a human and start experiencing the world like a dog. And for a dog, especially one of those long-nosed breeds, the world is primarily understood through its most powerful sense, smell.
And here's the theory he put together. Right around the 1950s, when the jumps began, American mink were introduced to the area. Now, these animals, they produce an incredibly potent musk that can drive hunting dogs into an absolute frenzy. On a clear, dry day, that scent would be at its strongest, wafting up from the ravine below. So a dog catches this overwhelming scent. Its instincts completely take over, and it just bolts. From a dog's low perspective, the bridge's thick, tapered granite wall doesn't look like a barrier to a 50-foot drop. It just looks like a little obstacle to clear on a continuous path. The dog isn't trying to die, it's trying to chase.
It's a compelling, logical explanation, right? Case closed. And yet, even the scientist Dr. Sands himself admitted that when he stood on that bridge, he felt something else. He called it a strange feeling. It was an acknowledgement that maybe science alone couldn't capture the whole story. A story that, for many people, builds into a much darker legend.
Because if you talk to the people who live there, the answer isn't found in biology, but in the rich tapestry of Scottish folklore. They believe the bridge is haunted, that there are forces at play here that are beyond our understanding. As Bob Hill, who used to live in the nearby Overtoun house, puts it, the supernatural is just deeply woven into the fabric of Scottish life. And that cultural context provides fertile ground for explanations that lie, well, beyond the reach of science. There are really two supernatural theories that dominate the local lore. The first is rooted in ancient Celtic mythology.
The idea that Overtoun is a thin place, a spot where the veil between our world and the next is unusually fragile, a kind of spiritual crossing that animals, with their heightened senses, can perceive. The second theory is more specific. It's the grieving ghost of Lady Overtoun. She passed away in 1908, and people say she still walks the bridge, her sorrowful presence disturbing any animal that crosses her path.
Now, these stories of spirits in thin places, you might be tempted to dismiss them as just folklore. But in 1994, a very real, very human horror unfolded on that bridge, and it added a new, terrible layer to its mythology.
That year, a local man suffering from a severe mental health crisis threw his 2-week-old son from the bridge to his death. He was convinced that the baby was the Antichrist. But the most chilling part of all, the coincidence? He threw his son from the exact same spot, between the last 2 parapets on the right side, the very place from which the dogs are compelled to jump. For many, this wasn't a coincidence. It was proof of something deeply malevolent, a residual negative energy that's embedded in the very stones of the bridge.
So where does that leave us? We're left with 2 powerful competing narratives. On one side, we have misadventure, a tragic accident of scent and perception, and on the other, we have malevolence, a story of spirits and a darkness that just defies explanation. I mean, let's be honest, the scientific case is strong. It lines up perfectly with the timeline of the mink's introduction. It explains why certain breeds are affected. It accounts for the weather conditions. It provides a completely rational framework for an event that seems totally irrational. For science, the verdict is clear: misadventure. But an explanation isn't a feeling, is it? And for those who have stood on that bridge, who have seen their own pets possessed by a strange energy, the scent of mink just feels insufficient. Maybe the folklore itself, combined with the site's very real human tragedy, creates a psychological weight so heavy that a simple scientific answer just can't help but feel incomplete. The atmosphere of the place, it keeps the mystery alive.
And that brings us to our final question, really. The mink theory explains what likely happens, but can it truly explain why it happens here, with such chilling consistency, in a place so soaked in tragedy and folklore? Can science account for that feeling that Lottie Mackinnon and so many others have described, that unsettling feeling that on Overtoun Bridge, something is patiently waiting?
In the dead of winter, February 1959, deep in the silent, frozen expanse of the Ural Mountains, a search party is trudging through the snow. They're out there looking for 9 missing hikers, students whose ambitious journey had just gone silent weeks before. What they're about to stumble upon isn't a rescue. No. It's the beginning of a story that would become one of the most chilling and deeply disturbing mysteries of the 20th century. The scene they found was just bizarre. It spoke of a pure, sudden panic. Their only shelter, a large tent, had been sliced open from the inside. Think about that for a second. All of their gear, their warm clothes, their boots, everything you would need to survive out there was just left behind. And leading away from this strange scene were 9 sets of footprints heading into a crushing -40-degree night. Some were just in socks. Some were completely barefoot. Now, these were not amateurs who got in over their heads. Not at all. The group was made up of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, all of them seasoned skiers and mountaineers. Their leader, 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, was guiding them on this incredibly tough 200-mile expedition. See, this was the kind of truck designed to earn them the highest possible certification for skill in the Soviet Union. They were capable, they were experienced, and they were prepared for anything. Or so they thought. According to a diary they found back at the tent, the group made their final camp on the evening of February 1st. And the spot they chose? It was a desolate, windswept slope on a mountain the local Mansi people had a name for, Kholat Syakil. In their language, the name means dead mountain. So, the search party followed those footprints. They led down the slope for nearly a mile toward the tree line. And there, under the heavy branches of a huge cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies. It was Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. They were dressed only in their underwear, their hands burned from a fire that had clearly gone out a long, long time ago. The whole scene just screamed of a frantic struggle. Branches on that cedar were snapped more than 15 feet up. It looked like somebody had desperately climbed it, trying to see something over the trees, or maybe trying to escape something on the ground. Between the tree line and the abandoned camp, they found 3 more bodies, including the expedition leader, Igor Dyatlov. The way they were found, their poses suggested they were making one last, hopeless effort to crawl back to the shelter they had so violently fled. For these first 5 hikers, the cause of death seemed tragically simple: hypothermia. They had frozen to death in that unforgiving cold. And you might think, well, that's the end of the story. But this was only the beginning. It would take 2 more months for the spring thaw to melt away the snow and to reveal the final, most disturbing chapter. Buried deep in a nearby ravine, the last 4 hikers were found. And their discovery would twist this tragedy into an inexplicable horror. You see, the autopsies on those last 4 hikers from the ravine revealed injuries that had absolutely nothing to do with the cold. Their bodies didn't tell a story of freezing to death. No, they told a story of being hit by some kind of devastating, unimaginable force. I mean, listen to this. One had a shattered skull. 2 others had their chests crushed with such incredible violence that a medical examiner later compared the force to being hit by a car. And here's the strangest part. Their bodies showed almost no external signs of trauma. No bruises, no cuts, no soft tissue damage. It was as if they had been broken from the inside out. And then, in a final, utterly baffling twist, one woman was missing her tongue, and 2 of the victims were found without their eyes. Soviet investigators were just stumped. There were no other footprints, no signs of a struggle, nothing to suggest there was anyone else out there. So, unable to explain what happened, they closed the case, stating only that the hikers had died from a compelling natural force. The files were then classified, locked away in a secret archive, and the entire area was sealed off for 3 years, leaving the whole mystery to just fester in silence. And you know what happens when there's an official vacuum like that, right? Speculation just rushes in to fill the void. For decades, theories just flourished in the dark. Everything from secret Soviet weapons tests to a KGB hit, even an attack by some kind of Yeti. And these ideas were only fanned by reports from another group of campers, about 50 kilometers away, who swore they saw strange glowing orange spheres in the sky on that very same night. For 60 years, that's where the mystery stayed, completely untouched by any official inquiry. But then, in 2019, Russian authorities finally reopened the case. And this led to a 2021 study by Swiss scientists who modeled a rare but entirely natural possibility, something called a delayed slab avalanche. So here's how the science probably explains it. When the hikers cut into the hillside to pitch their tent, they unknowingly weakened a heavy slab of snow right above them. All through the night, these incredibly fierce winds, called katabatic winds, would have just piled more and more heavy snow on top of that slab. Then, hours later, while they were asleep, the whole thing fractured. It wasn't a huge classic avalanche, but a compact, brutally heavy block of snow that slid down and just crushed their tent, inflicting those devastating internal injuries in the dark. Panicked, some of them already badly hurt, with the entrance buried, they did the only thing they could think to do. They cut their way out and ran for their lives, completely disoriented and fatally unprepared for the cold. This scenario is now the official conclusion from the Russian investigation. And you have to admit, it presents a logical framework that seems to answer a lot of the case's most perplexing questions. The horrific internal injuries without any external wounds, the tent being cut from the inside, and that panicked, seemingly irrational flight into the freezing darkness. And yet, for so many people, the explanation, it feels almost too neat. Does a scientific model really account for every single bizarre detail, like the missing soft tissue or those strange lights in the sky? Or does it just put a clinical name on an event that was, at its heart, a chaotic, terrifying, and ultimately human struggle against an overwhelming force? Maybe the complete truth, whatever it is, will forever remain buried out there in the snows of Dead Mountain.